Before we start the movie, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our latest content. The movie begins with a woman named Mary and her husband. Her husband had taken his son in the car to drop him off at a boarding school because the boy had grown up and was causing many problems at home. So, his father decided to send him to a boarding school, where he would see him every semester or something like that. The boy's name is Stephen, and he is Mary's stepson, not her biological son. Mary watched as they left and bid him farewell while his father drove him to the boarding school. She told him that she loved him, but Stephen didn't want to leave Mary and was very angry. Because of that, while they were on the road, Stephen argued with his father and grabbed the steering wheel, causing an accident. 6 months later, Stephen was living with Mary, but he was left paralyzed due to the accident, and Mary had become his caretaker. His father had died in the crash. Stephen could no longer move any part of his body except with great difficulty, so Mary took full responsibility for everything, feeding him, giving him water, and changing his clothes. In other words, Mary became his hands and feet. One day, while Mary was at work, a young boy named Tom was brought to her. Tom didn't speak and had psychological issues. He was an orphan and struggled to communicate. Mary tried to help him overcome his problems because she was a psychologist, and her treatment for Tom was showing good results. However, the social worker in charge of him told Mary that they would be transferring Tom to another city. Mary asked, "Why? He's improving with us." The social worker explained that Tom had caused problems at school and had broken a classmate's arm, so they had no choice but to move him to another city to start fresh. Mary strongly opposed this decision, but she had no power to change it. Tom was upset that he had to leave Mary because he felt comfortable with her. But before he left, Mary went home, got him a scarf and a hat, and gave them to him because she was very attached to him. Then Tom left, and Mary continued her day. That night, while helping Stephen bathe, she had a sudden thought, to drown him, as she felt tormented by caring for him. And she actually did it, but then she realized it was just a dream. Later, Mary heard knocking at the door. She went downstairs to check but found nothing. Then she heard the sound again, coming from outside. She stepped out, looked left and right, but saw no one. She followed the sound to the garage, where she found her car's window shattered and discovered Tom inside. Of course, Mary was shocked to see Tom at her house and wondered how he had made it there through the snow. But despite her surprise, she was happy to see him because she was deeply attached to him. She brought him inside, warmed him up, and then called the police to inform them that Tom was with her. She left Tom in the house and went to her bedroom to make the call in private, but suddenly, the door shut behind her. She quickly grabbed the spare key and unlocked the door again, only to find that Tom was gone, and the front door was wide open. She rushed outside, calling Tom's name and searching everywhere, but he was nowhere to be found. The next day, a police officer came to her house, and Mary told him everything that had happened. The officer assured her they would start searching for Tom. Later, Mary went back to Stephen and continued her daily routine. She kept calling the police and the social services center to check on Tom, but there was no news. No one knew where he was. That night, while she was sleeping, she heard knocking again. She went downstairs to check, but there was nothing. The sound came from outside. She stepped out, looked left and right, but saw no one. However, she heard strange and eerie noises, which made her rush back inside and shut the door. But she was startled to realize she had closed the door on someone's hand. She quickly reopened it and found Stephen sitting in his wheelchair, his hands wounded. At that moment, Mary woke up again. It was just another dream. She was starting to lose her nerves, but she still tried to go about her life normally. Later, a teenage boy, about Stephen's age, came to her for therapy. He was going through puberty, had become somewhat aggressive, found nothing enjoyable, and felt that life around him was dull. He was also frustrated because his parents were about to separate. Mary tried to help him, but he refused to give her a chance. His father later met with Mary and told her that the boy was difficult to handle. Mary replied, "Give him some time, and he'll be fine." The boy's father, Doug, was attracted to Mary and asked her out, so they set a date to meet. That night, Mary sat beside Stephen, holding a newspaper, staring at a picture of Tom, feeling extremely worried and fearful for him. Just then, she heard knocking inside the house. She was startled by the noise, and suddenly, Stephen grabbed her hand tightly. She struggled to pull away and finally managed to put his hand back in place. The next day, Mary spoke to her psychiatrist friend, explaining everything she was going through, the strange noises, the hallucinations, and the unsettling experiences. The doctor told her, "It sounds like you're not getting enough sleep." Mary replied, "It's not just lack of sleep, something strange is happening." Her colleague, Dr. Wilson, said, "You've been through a lot lately, especially with the exhausting care for Stephen. It has affected your mental state. I want you to get a blood test so I can prescribe you something to help you sleep." After the call, Mary went to collect the laundry. As she walked through the house, she noticed that a table had been moved from its original place, leaving a mark on the floor. Behind the table was a small door leading to the basement. Mary noticed that the door was slightly open, so she closed it and moved the table back in place. That night, Doug came over, and they talked about their worries. Mary told him she was deeply concerned about Tom and wished she could know if he was safe. After their conversation, Doug left, and Mary went to sleep. But in the middle of the night, she woke up to loud knocking inside the house. She felt dizzy, and her vision was blurry. She looked towards Stephen's room and found his bed empty. She started searching for him all over the house, but her sight remained foggy, and she kept hearing multiple strange noises. When she reached the small door leading to the basement, she found it open again. She decided to move the table and open the door completely. Suddenly, a small child's hand grabbed hers. Terrified, Mary pulled her hand away and quickly shut the door, pushing the table back in place. Then, unable to move, she collapsed on the floor and slept there until morning. In the morning, the first thing Mary did was rush to check on Stephen, as she hadn't found him in his bed the night before. But when she looked at him, he was there in bed, though she noticed scratches on his face. Mary called Dr. Wilson again and told him what had happened. He said, "You're not getting enough sleep. What's happening to you is just hallucinations caused by sleep deprivation." Mary replied, "Even the scratches on Stephen's face, are those hallucinations too?" Wilson said, "Maybe you scratched him by accident. I'll try to speed up the blood test results so I can prescribe you medication as soon as possible." Mary agreed. Then, she placed Stephen in front of the TV and saw an announcement about Tom, urging anyone with information about him to call the numbers listed. Mary felt deeply saddened as she looked at Tom's picture. That night, she heard knocking sounds coming from the basement, so she went down to check, but found nothing. As she returned upstairs, she was startled to see Doug standing in front of her. Shocked, she asked, "What are you doing here?" Doug said, "I came to check on you. Are you okay?" Mary coldly replied, "I'm fine. You could have just called instead of coming over." She then told him she was busy and asked him to leave. Mary then went back down to the basement, trying to open the locked door, but she couldn't find a key. At that moment, she received a Skype call from Dr. Wilson, who told her that the blood test results had arrived. He said, "Your blood is full of the medication your son takes. Why are you taking his medicine?" Mary responded, "I don't know what you're talking about. I don't take any medication." Wilson replied, "Your test says otherwise. You've been taking your son's medicine." Mary became frustrated and said, "Sorry, I have something important to do," then ended the call. She then returned to the basement and tried to break the lock. Meanwhile, Wilson happened to glance at Stephen's wheelchair and noticed it was empty. He then saw Stephen walking past him, perfectly fine, not paralyzed at all. Wilson immediately realized something was wrong. At the same time, Mary finally managed to open the door, but just then, the power went out in the entire house. She quickly grabbed a flashlight and looked inside the space she had just unlocked. To her horror, she found Tom locked inside. Mary panicked and tried to flee, but she found Stephen standing in front of her. He struck her, and she lost consciousness. When Mary woke up, she found herself tied up in the bathtub, with Stephen sitting beside her. He started talking, saying that he loved her too much to bear being apart from her. That was why he had caused the accident with his father. He was willing to die, but he wouldn't let her go. He loved her as his mother and didn't want to share her with anyone. It turned out that he had locked Tom away because he felt Mary was giving him too much attention, which made him jealous. He told her he was willing to do anything to stay with her and wouldn't let anything separate them. In other words, Stephen was obsessively in love with Mary. It was also revealed that he had been drugging her drinks with his medication to make her sleep at times when he wanted to move around freely. Meanwhile, Wilson was driving toward Mary's house, trying to call the police on the way. Back at the house, Mary managed to grab some shampoo and used it to slip her hands free from the ropes. She then rushed down to the basement to rescue Tom. When she arrived, she found that Stephen had tied up Tom and was holding a knife and a hammer, intending to kill him. Mary initially tried to reason with Stephen, but he was completely unhinged. She grabbed a gun and pointed it at him, but Stephen smirked and said, "By the way, the gun is empty." Mary then struck him in the face with the gun and ran to free Tom. After untying him, Stephen lunged at Mary again. She told Tom to run as fast as he could. Once more, she tried to calm Stephen down, saying, "Don't kill Tom, and I'll stay with you." But Stephen refused, saying, "No, I'm going to kill him." Mary ran out and locked the basement door behind her, then hid with Tom. But Stephen broke down the door and started searching for them throughout the house. At that moment, Wilson arrived and entered the house, calling out for Mary, but she couldn't respond. Suddenly, Wilson found himself face to face with Stephen, who immediately stabbed him. Stephen then went upstairs to look for Mary and Tom. As Mary tried to escape, she was horrified to find Doug's lifeless body dumped outside the house. She then found Wilson, barely alive. With his dying breath, he told her, "Stephen has a psychological disorder. He's dangerously attached to you. I suggest you tell him whatever calms him down and get Tom away from here. If Stephen catches him, he'll kill him." Then Wilson died. Mary took his advice and tried to escape with Tom, but Stephen caught her. She told him, "Stephen, I was looking for you. Look, Tom is gone, and it's just you and me now, like you wanted. But I need you to let Tom live." Stephen replied, "You're lying. You don't love me. You don't want to be with me. You love Tom more than me." Mary responded, "Okay, give me your hand." She took his hand and placed it on the hot stove. At that moment, Stephen decided to kill Mary, but Tom, watching from above, distracted him. Seizing the opportunity, Mary grabbed a frying pan and struck Stephen on the head. She then grabbed Tom and ran out of the house. Stephen chased them all the way to the river. There, Mary desperately tried to stop Stephen from killing Tom, but Stephen overpowered her and tried to drown Tom. Mary pleaded, "Stephen, let him go. Don't kill him, and I'll stay with you." But Stephen was determined to end Tom's life. With no other choice, Mary picked up a hammer and struck Stephen on the head. He fell into the water and died. Mary had saved Tom. After that night, Mary decided to leave the town for good and moved to another city. Not only that, but she also adopted Tom and decided to raise him as her own. And that's where today's movie ends. If you enjoyed the film, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our new content.